he's been the target of threats.
Could you give us the nature of some of those threats?
It makes absolutely no sense to go under the theory that Saudi Arabian fossil fuels pollute the earth, but American fossil fuels don't.
There's more news about the Paul Pelosi attack that's kind of interesting that I'd like to go through in somewhat detail. Bill Maher had Kid Rock on his podcast yesterday and said some really interesting things that I think a lot of right-leaning voters would like. Also, interest rates are going up. We'll get you caught up to date on that. And maybe we'll talk about the border a little bit also. All that and more coming up on this episode of Daily Caller Live. My name is Jobob. Thanks so much for tuning in. Daily Caller Live starts right now.
3, 2, 1.
Here we go!
Might be the only brown guy on earth named Jobob.
That is actually their name, Jobob.
Live from the dingy bunker, completely cut off from the outside world, except for you fine folks. My name is Jobob. This is Daily Caller Live. Thanks so much for tuning in on today. It is November 2nd, the year of our Lord 2022. I'm not sure how I feel about this hat. I like the concept of it, but I don't know if I like the color and the fit of it. Who cares? There's some interesting Pelosi stuff coming out today, or came out yesterday that I wanted to get into, including the Capitol Police. The Capitol Police apparently were involved at some level, albeit not a huge point. So let me get just this out of the air. I said this on Monday. It seems like there was a horrific attack on the husband of the Speaker of the House of the United States of America. There's a lot of conspiracy theories that are floated out there that this was Paul Pelosi's gay lover that he brought home from a nightclub and this and that and this and that. Fine, okay? There's a lot of stuff that still needs to unfold. I'm not taking part in really any of those quote-unquote conspiracy theories, whatever you want to call them, at least as of yet. What I do find interesting, though, and what pretty much everybody finds interesting, including your lefty media, is how did somebody break into the Speaker of the House's home? Again, the third in line to the presidency, you would think they have a little bit more security. Well, yesterday we found out from the Capitol Police that they actually do have cameras on Nancy Pelosi's house. In an article from ABC, actually it was first reported in the Washington Post, this is what ABC said. The U.S. Capitol Police had cameras outside the home of House Speaker Nancy Pelosi. But, and this is weird, they were not monitored, according to 3 sources familiar with the matter. Capitol Police saw the flashing police lights on the camera, rewound the video, and saw the break-in, according to sources. It is unclear whether or not the cameras should have been monitored at the time. I think there was a guy in jail recently, I don't know if you've heard of him, a guy named Jeffrey Epstein that is looking at this going, this is interesting. Again, I am not participating in the crazy out there theories of what was going on here. All I'm saying is that something seems off. Yesterday, the police also said that Paul Pelosi was the one that answered the door, but there's still, to my knowledge, no body cam footage of that or home surveillance footage of that, which, if I was putting out, well, and get into my theories about why some of this stuff isn't what's happening right now. That if I were to have a theory about this, it would be that Nancy Pelosi, being one of the most, I hate to use this word, but it's true, gifted spinners of news into political arguments, it could be that they're withholding some of this stuff so that the speculation continues to swirl and people get off into conspiracy land because there's no information. When there's little information out, I've noticed a lot of people, especially on Twitter, jump to some pretty crazy conclusions. And I'm not going there yet. I'm still waiting for stuff to come out, but it is kind of interesting. The Washington Post says ABC was the first to report this detail. Let's see. Capitol Police Chief Tom Manager on Tuesday said his department is looking at providing added security for members of Congress after last week's assault of Paul Pelosi. Again, why wasn't it already there? I feel like that is a justifiable question to ask. So just so we're caught up on what the actual story is and this is what's out there. Maybe you've heard this, maybe you haven't, depending on what circles you run in getting your news/media. But the guy apparently broke into the house, which nobody knows how or why he was able to do that, went upstairs, woke up a sleeping Paul Pelosi, threatened him with a hammer. Paul Pelosi convinced him, I need to go to the bathroom. And then while in the bathroom where his phone was charging, he made a call to 911. Police showed up 2 minutes later. This is all according to the quote-unquote official narrative. Obviously, you can have some doubts on this sort of stuff because not everything is there as of yet. Despite being told the speaker was not home, would be home for several days, the guy said he would wait and started taking zip ties from his backpack to tie up Paul Pelosi, according to the complaint. Again, this is terrible. By the way, too, this dude is a crazy guy. Like, this is not a... You can't get blamed as a conservative, as a liberal, as a Republican, as a Democrat for the most recent utterances of an insane person. This guy, I'll say this. In the same way that I didn't blame Bernie Sanders for the baseball shooting at the GOP, which left Steve Scalise in a pretty terrible spot. In the same way that I didn't blame Bernie Sanders specifically for that, it's very difficult to blame anybody else, again, for the actions of a crazy person. But regardless, this still is a crazy story. 2 minutes later, the police arrived and entered the home, encountering the dude and Paul Pelosi struggling over the hammer. Officials told the men to drop the hammer, at which time the guy allegedly gained control of the hammer and swung it, striking Paul Pelosi in the head. Officers immediately restrained and disarmed the dude while Paul Pelosi appeared to be unconscious on the floor. That had to be scary. That's a wild situation. Now, I like to, in this particular circumstance, bring up some of the shortcomings of the Capitol Police. Now, we've done this story in the past, probably 6-8 months ago, but anytime the Capitol Police are in the news, I think it's fascinating to bring up this particular component. Now, okay, let me start off with saying that if government officials, non-elected government officials, bureaucrats, but also employees, screw up to the extent of not monitoring a camera that's surveilling the Speaker of the House's home, which, again, that remains to be seen whether or not the camera should have been monitored at the time. I'm going to go ahead and assume it probably should have been, and somebody was sleeping on the job. But if and when people in the bureaucratic system of the federal government, or really any government for that matter, screw up, I expect heads to roll. Obviously, I'm not actually advocating for people being decapitated. I can't believe I have to make that disclaimer. But I think people should be fired or held accountable. In this case, it would seem the Capitol Police people that should have been surveilling Nancy Pelosi's house and maybe could have responded much quicker, because we don't know really, I don't think the timeline of how long it was from the dude entering the house to the cops showing up. It was 2 minutes from the cops getting called, then showing up. But that time between the break-in and the phone call, we don't actually know. But regardless, it seems like somebody should have been watching those cameras and they weren't. And so I want to ask the question, who is going to get fired? It's really the only concern that I have at the moment. My biggest, what is going on here, is the fact that somebody was able to get into the Speaker of the House's home, the third in line of the president, regardless of what you think about her politics. That shouldn't be possible. I wouldn't think that I would be able to do that with the amount of security. And so this is fascinating. This is what getting around back to this point, this is what I think is fascinating about this particular story, especially given some of the news headlines that have been revolving around the Capitol Police, especially in recent months. If you haven't already, I would really, really appreciate it. I see a couple thousand of you watching this on Facebook, YouTube, Getter, Twitter, all of those. If you wouldn't mind, I would love if you click the little like button down here, or the little angry button, or is there a confused button? I don't actually know if there's a confused button. And the little share button that really, really does help us out. Appreciate you doing that. Keeps us kind of chugging along each and every day. Would appreciate you doing that because I think this is a fascinating piece of insight into how the government works. This is a story from 2019 regarding the Capitol Police. And again, this is all revolving around the idea that somebody should have been watching those cameras and apparently wasn't. Again, it remains to be seen whether they should have been watching, but I think they should. If I were to make a guess, I would imagine they should have been watching. This story from 2019, and I think it's fascinating. A U.S. Capitol Police lieutenant left his service weapon in a bathroom Monday night, and an unattended gun was discovered later by another Capitol Police officer. So, a Capitol Police person left their loaded firearm in a bathroom in the visitors section of the Capitol. After the House adjourned on Monday, this is again from 2019, Lieutenant Mike Byrd left his Glock 22 in a bathroom in the Capitol Visitor Center complex, according to sources familiar with the incident. Byrd is the commander of the House Chamber section of the Capitol Police and was on the job Tuesday and Wednesday. Byrd addressed the incident on Tuesday morning, again, this is from 2019, after the officer roll call, and according to sources, told his fellow officers that he will be treated differently because of his rank as a lieutenant. It was not clear exactly what the lieutenant meant at the moment. Unlike a gun with traditional safeties, a Glock will fire if the trigger is pulled, making the discovery of an unattended gun in the Capitol complex particularly concerning. Now, what I'm getting at here is some dude in the Capitol Police left his gun in the bathroom and subsequently was not fired. Now, does that name Mike Byrd ring a bell to anybody? Lieutenant Michael Byrd? If it does, it's because of this video. Check this out. Also, if you haven't already, would appreciate you clicking the little like button and the little share button. But again, from 2019, some officer left his gun in the bathroom, loaded in the visitor center, was not fired, and then this happened.
Your name has been battered about on the internet, but you've never been officially publicly identified. Do you want to tell us who you are?
My name is Michael Byrd. I'm a lieutenant for the United States Capitol Police.
For months, he has lived in hiding, he says, over this moment. His decision to use deadly force against a rioter as she climbed through a barricaded door that leads to the House chamber.
So that guy, Michael Byrd, Lieutenant Byrd, was the same guy that shot Ashley Babbitt at the Capitol riots. Now, whether or not you think that's justified, that's not this conversation. This is not what we're doing. What I'm saying here is that this dude left his gun in the bathroom, unattended, loaded, in the visitor center, still kept his job, and then subsequently went on to either, I don't know, save lives, as he says, or unjustifiably shoot somebody, which, again, that's not the conversation we're having right now. The bottom line here is, who was watching Nancy Pelosi's house, and will they get fired? I hope so. Seriously. This is the biggest thing that I have at this point right now with the Pelosi investigation is, why was this guy able to get in the house with nobody knowing, and who was supposed to be watching? I don't know. Political violence is never good, regardless on who you are and how you vote. Kimberly says, I don't leave my gun anywhere. No way. Yeah, I don't like. And if you did, you would get in serious trouble and not keep your job as a lieutenant. And then, yeah, dumb. Anyways, so that's a fascinating story. And again, as stuff continues to unfold with this Paul Pelosi thing, we'll continue to bring it. Again, well wishes to the guy. Hope he recovers. But also, there's some weird stuff going on. And I don't know. I would love to see the video that the Capitol Police supposedly saw when the dude broke into the house, according to them, or according to 3 different sources, verified by the Washington Post. They rewound the video and saw the guy actually breaking in. I'd love to see that. So, anyways, I want to move on to this. This I thought was fascinating. Bill Maher has kind of been an interesting fixture the last couple years, because he is a bleeding heart liberal, but also not a woke crazy person. Now, I like to make it clear on this show that there's a difference. There's a difference between regular union Democrats, which you agree with or don't, and woke crazy Democrats who are crazy and insane. Don't generally like calling people names, but I feel like that's the only thing that actually fits. Bill Maher, however, is an odd breed in today's society. He's got a TV show on HBO and has been the leading voice for the left for like 25 years. But at the same time, he's also a rational person. Like Bill Maher or not, he is a reasonable, rational individual. And what he said on his podcast with Kid Rock, interestingly, yesterday, I feel like needs to get some attention. Like I said, Bill Maher is not a woke, stupid, crazy environmentalist. I think I probably have a lot of coinciding beliefs regarding the environment. I love the environment. I wish we could entirely go green tomorrow, but I'm also a realist and know that that's not possible. And therefore, maybe we should drill on our own land rather than beg the Saudis for oil. And Bill Maher, in his podcast with Kid Rock, shared the same sentiment. Check this out. I thought it was fascinating. And then there's another clip that I want to play from this episode that I think is really, really interesting regarding the climate around how we're dealing with politics. Also, if you haven't already, click the little like button down here and a little share button. Would really, really appreciate you doing so. Or engage with the comment or the post in any way, shape, or form. What are gas prices like where you are? I know I ask that questions often, but I at least get somewhat of an anecdotal like gas price thing. So anyways, check this out.
You don't twist them like most people do. I haven't done interviews in years because there's always a gotcha moment.
Absolutely.
A headline.
Right.
For the radio station, for this, for that.
On your drilling point, let me concede this, as I have on my show. It makes absolutely no sense to go under the theory that Saudi Arabian fossil fuels pollute the earth, but American fossil fuels don't. If
they just don't pollute us.
If you're not right, I wish we would be all green like tomorrow. But until that happens, I mean, like Germany was very ambitious about going green, but they didn't reach the goal. So in other words, they threw the bathwater out with the baby. I don't know, whatever. Forget that analogy. What happened was they had to go back to nuclear.
Yeah, because
they had a shortfall. And
I do know about this.
I want us to get there, but until we get there, if we're going to use energy, right? Why not American energy as opposed to Saudi Arabian? It just seemed like a very backwards thing. So, like, no, I will never, like, just go with my team. I don't have a team. I don't want one.
I never have either. I
definitely don't want your team.
I played Barack Obama's inauguration.
You did?
Me and Kanye West actually were the first people to meet him as president. We were in a room together.
I think that's a fascinating conversation. If you haven't watched this, it's like an hour and a half long, but it's really, really interesting to see two guys who clearly have varying political beliefs just talk about stuff. And like I said, Bill Maher, I think I agree with him a lot on, well, maybe not how we get to completely, quote unquote, clean energy, or even if that's possible. But I would say that I do love the environment. I don't want to destroy things if we can help it. But at the same time, I'm also fully aware that that's not where we're at right now. That's where the technology isn't there. And if somebody like Bill Maher is agreeing with that, I think it's a pretty legitimate argument to say that, hey, maybe we should not take oil from the Saudis and maybe we should drill it ourselves. When these videos are playing, I get a chance to kind of look at some of the comments, and I think they're kind of, in the comment section, there are like wars going on. I'm fascinated with some of these people that I don't know if they're bots or if they're like real people who actually think these things. I'm not going to bring up some of the crazy stuff, but there's a lot of people that apparently have a differing opinion than myself and a lot of people on the show. And that's fine. I fully accept that you have a differing opinion. And thanks for watching. But at the same time, I also can't tell if you're a real person or a Chinese bot. And I feel like if you're in the comment section on the right page, you can probably see who who we're talking about. But I don't know. The comment section is wild on these things. And we really appreciate you throwing your comments in here because it does help us out with the whole algorithmic component, especially on Facebook. Wow, getting some of these gas prices are nuts. Mark says it's $4.33 in Kitsap County, Washington, which is wow. I thought California was expensive. That's pretty expensive too. Lisa says that in Baltimore, Maryland, it's $3.67 and rising by 10 cents a day, which is not comforting. But anyways, check this out. This is what I also thought was fascinating from this clip, from this interview / podcast, whatever you want to call it, with Bill Maher talking to Kid Rock on how we fix America. And I wholeheartedly agree with this. Check this out.
Come on.
Well,
man.
I mean, Bob, come on, that's anecdotal. But look, I don't want to, again, we could talk about this. You don't want to, and I don't want to. So let's try to, since we have no dissenting votes on this issue, agree that what heals America more than anything is two people who have the acumen to figure out what they are not going to convince the other of or agree on, and so leave it alone. Right?
Absolutely.
That's
I don't know why those videos are playing or going black at the end. But yeah, that seems to be the case. If you they're talking about Trump there specifically. They both are like, look, I'm not going to change my mind. You're not going to change your mind. Let's talk about other things, which seems to be a prevailing. At least I try to do that sort of stuff. If I'm not going to change your mind on something, even if you're dead wrong, I'm going to move on. Maybe, hopefully, someday you might be able to see something that isn't coming from my mouth, and maybe that will change your mind on something else. But I think it's a useless exercise to argue with somebody who's so set in their ways that you're not going to change their mind. Now, on a policy standpoint, there's obviously information that can be input. There's different things going in there. But on the big, broader scope of whether or not you like Trump, or dislike Trump, which Bill Maher dislikes Trump, Kid Rock loves Trump, he says in this, it seems that the best way to go forward is to understand what you can convince people of and what you can't convince people of, and vote accordingly. So there's that. I thought that was a really interesting exchange. Again, would recommend watching the whole thing, again, because these guys couldn't disagree more politically, I think. That being said, check this out. This is what's happening today. I know this is not a sexy thing to talk about. Inflation is not a fun issue to discuss, but it is probably the most prevailing thing affecting everybody's life. Now, there's big issues like crime, which is, yes, terrible and bad and going up in so many places around the country. The border is obviously a huge issue. 2.4 million people crossed in the last fiscal year, which is a record beyond records, even when you adjust for the population increase. But at the same time, inflation is what it seems like has the biggest effect on people's lives. I'm curious in the comment section, what's the thing that in the store that you notice inflation is having a big effect on? For me, it's the salad box things. It's like a little plastic thing of lettuce or mixed greens or whatever it is. Those used to be $2.39, like $2.39. And it hasn't really raised all that much. I think it got to $3.19. I went to the store the other day, $4.99, $5. Doubled. It doubled in price, which, this is not going to kill us financially, but holy cow, it doubled. That's the thing that I see. I would love to hear what you notice most in the comments section. Julie says everything, eggs, meat, and potatoes. Meat is nuts. Somebody, I'm not sure who this is, says everything as well. But I'm curious specifically what has gone up. Anyways, to help inflation, which again, this is an unfortunate reality, but inflation is going to only be solved by clamping down on the economy. What causes inflation is the federal government spending way too much money, and people having more money and therefore spending more money, and then money circulating to a rampant degree, which causes inflation to go up. So what you need to do to cause inflation to go down is tamp down on the economy. The Federal Reserve, which is the central bank, is the only place that is able to do that by increasing interest rates. When interest rates go up, the bank interest rates go up, your interest rates for your new car goes up, all of the interest rates for everything you borrow goes up, meaning that people get more skittish when they're saving or when they're spending money, and they tend to not spend as much money, which hopefully causes inflation to go down. That being said, the Fed is expected to raise interest rates again today. Now, this might have happened while we've been on air, but ever since we got on here, I haven't seen the actual notification that says the interest rates have officially gone up. But let's see. Even with the central bank's aggressive stance toward fighting inflation, this is from the USA Today, the S&P 500 has risen the following four of the last 5 other rate hikes. So there's been 5 rate hikes this year alone, and they're looking at the stock market saying, well, it's still going up, so nobody's quite sure what's happening there. I think the stock market is I'm at a risk of going on a stock/finance tangent, and I realize that I'm not a finance expert, and this is something generally more reserved for me and my friends bantering around the fireplace late at night. But one could assume that companies are being emboldened, possibly, if they do in fact continue to rise, by the assumption that the federal government will continue to dump more money into the system, and therefore they would make more money. The Fed rate hikes have also triggered a stock sell-off, heightened risk of recession, but they aim to stop rising prices. Now, we've talked about this on this show. Recession, obviously, according to the standard definition of a recession, the previous 2 quarters, not the most recent reporting, we were in a recession by the standard definition of 2 quarters of shrinking the GDP, which happened. But I think last week there were new numbers that came out and the GDP did not shrink, which is, again, confusing to anybody who follows kind of standard economic processes. Doesn't really make sense to me, and anybody who says it does make sense is freaking lying to you. Those lying liars. Let's see. The increase will have a direct impact on consumers' wallets, making it more expensive for them to get a mortgage or pay off credit card debt. Generally speaking, credit cards are they're not fixed, variable rates. And with the interest rates going up, credit card rates will go up, and so will mortgages and variable rate car payments. Sharon says, stop governments from spending. Yeah. That I accidentally brought that one up, but that was kind of funny too. The government spending things is probably a good thing to not do. Regarding some of the things that have gone up, especially at the grocery store, Jim says even frozen prepared meals are up 50%. Let's see. Specifically, what has gone up? Everything, says Gloria. Catherine says crab legs used to be $10 a pound on sale, and now are $17. Yeah. Hannah says specifically everything. Yeah. So I guess that's the case. Well, bad news is things are going to get more expensive. But unfortunately, the reality is, and I'm not going to sit here and blame anybody specifically, but the reality is it has to get worse in order to get better in terms of spending and the ability to spend. If you bought a home in 2020/early 2021, you were a lucky duck, because holy cow, that fixed interest rate, I don't know what this is going to do to the housing market, because I hate to go on speculating here, but think about the reactionary component of this. People who got locked in at 2.5% interest rate or 3% interest rates, which is historically low. Even what interest rates are at now, 6 or 7%, that's historically low. But if they go up to 10%, I think the last federal interest rate rise, the Federal Reserve interest rate rise, caused not housing prices, but monthly payments to increase by 40%. Does that restrict the market, making less people buy houses, but also at the same time cause people to sell their house less, which then what does that do to the actual housing market? Do housing prices come down because less people are wanting to buy, or do they stay the same because less people are willing to sell because they're locked in at a 2.5 to 3.5% interest rate? I don't know. I'm not an expert. Anybody who claims to know is lying to you. And again, sorry for subjecting you to my real estate rate speculation. I don't know. It's something I find interesting. Wayne says home heating and diesel is what he's noticed the most prices going up. So, yeah. A lot of people also ask too, this is an interesting question, especially with Republicans looking to take back the House and the Senate in these midterms. There's a lot of questions being asked. Well, what are you going to do to fix inflation? There's nothing they can do. Just so you know, just so we're clear, there is actually nothing that Republicans in the House, Democrats in the House, Republicans in the Senate, Democrats in the Senate, Democrats in the administrative office, the executive office, there's nothing that any of the legislatures could do to make interest or to make inflation go down. However, there are things that they are currently doing to make it go up. So when people say, well, what are Republicans going to do to fix inflation? Nothing. Nothing is a good answer. Not spending any more money, not letting the administration spend any more money, and appointing judges that will knock down unconstitutional student loan debt forgiveness type things would actually fix. So in other words, doing nothing is a good answer when it comes to stopping inflation. All right. Anyways, I'm going to stop bantering about that. I think, yeah, we'll get out of your hair at the moment. Mike says no more government spending would help. Jan says push for energy independence. Yeah, those things would also help. But again, when it comes to actually making inflation go down, it's solely the job of the Federal Reserve. And the only way they can do that is hike interest rates up, which is going to suck for the rest of us. But it has to happen. So I don't know what you do about that. Anyways, that's going to do it for us today. Appreciate you sticking around, tuning in. Let's see. Anything else going on today that I think is interesting? A lot of people have asked in the comment section, especially on Instagram, where do you get this hilarious Joe Biden t-shirt? It is the president with his catchphrase of, what? As he is confused often. Oh, there's a funny story that maybe I'll tell that happened to an airport. It happened to me at an airport. What was this? Saturday morning. Very, very funny. Maybe I'll tell that story some other time wearing this t-shirt. But if you want them, you can go to any of my social media platforms. You'll be able to find the link, or it's like capitalistpropaganda.us. You can find this t-shirt. It's relatively cheap too. But also you can follow me on any of your social media platforms. Just type JOBOB into everything. Let's see. I'm curious to check in the comment section if James tells me to fix the chyron with a laughing emoji, because that's generally what I say here. The chyron here on the Facebook is wrong, but I'm lazy and haven't been able to fix it. If you haven't already, would appreciate you also clicking the little like button and the little share button if you made it all the way to this part in the show. Thank you so much for watching. But it really does help us out, especially if we can boost the like numbers. It helps the algorithm keep rolling. So if you haven't already done so, would appreciate it clicking the little like button and the little share button right here, and engaging with the post in the comment section. That would be awesome. Yeah, that's going to do it for us today. Let's see. We are in Orlando tonight and tomorrow night, which means we'll probably do this show, I think, around the normal time tomorrow from Orlando. We're working on a stand-up gig too. If you're in the greater Orlando metropolitan area, we're working on a stand-up gig on Thursday. I will have more details about that tomorrow if that's the case. Kind of like a pop-up thing. So if you're in the Orlando area, would love to see you if in fact we do end up doing a stand-up show. But yeah, we'll see you tomorrow, same time, different place. See you then. God bless America.